Beautiful. Okay. All right. Okay, so pencils down, hack complete for now. It doesn't have to be over forever. Keep hacking after the event. But right now, see how far we got. And so what's going to happen next is, bless you, we're going to do quick report outs from the learning session, discussion groups, and the hacking teams. And I'm going to ask everybody that was, every hacking team to have at least one person come on up to the podium here. And we've got your slides already. And so we'll just go through the slides, and when your team comes up in the next slide, come on up and speak to what happened. Who here needs to plug in their own computer for something? Kevin and Kayvon. Okay, that's not confusing. Okay, so bring your computers, and have you both independently verified that you're HDMI friendly with this? And you have, okay, terrific. That is a political, actually status, HDMI friendly, and it's going to be ballot measure 12, so vote. So basically, and then what's going to happen next is we're going to sort of smooth on in from the report outs of the hacking teams into George Howard's basically 4 points of failure for blockchain in the context of the music industry transition to a digital age in the Open Music Initiative kind of motif. And then we're going to go from that 4 points of failure, we're going to then further smooth on out to a facilitated dialogue. And George and I will kind of go from the themes of your projects, the themes of his talk, and then we want to hear from really all of you, at least once, unless, you know, but if you're moved to say something, please do. And we want to kind of work with you and co-think and address some of the challenges and opportunities and big questions that George will help us to crisp up through the course of his talk. Sound good? Yes. So you can't see it in camera land, but there is an aggressive nodding of the head, and we have an on-site chiropractor, so we should be fine. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Okay. All right, so the first project is Endor for the music industry. This is, I think this is you, Stav. Could you do a quick report out of what happened in the learning session for those of us who were unfortunate enough not to participate in it? Sure. Like if we were running an event and we didn't hear it. Yeah, look, come on up here and we'll get each report out from the podium and then return to the circle. Here you go. Stav, Endor.
Thanks. So first of all, thank you for participating in this very live discussion that we had. You had very interesting points. A lot of questions were raised, and I think that we answered some of them. You are welcome to address me after this session, and we could continue discussing those new questions that you might have. But the idea was to talk about the way we can take data and we can create insights based on predictive analytics, and mainly thinking of maybe disruptive ways such as Endor technology to make it faster and make it available for everyone. So kind of taking this point until the end. One of the things that we've talked about is how this problem is very, very relevant to mainly all the organizations that have data, have this sparsity of data scientists that do not work on all the business aspects of the company that want to kind of grow their business from those insights, and how we can do that much better and faster with utilizing tools such as Endor Engine, predictive analytics, and so forth. So once again, thank you for the time and for the discussion. I think that we had some great things there. Thanks.
Here. Thank you. And thanks to the whole Endor team for coming out in force.
Sorry?
Machine learning.
Thanks.
And other days it's Media Lab.
Yeah.
Meta layer. Some nice use cases here. Just quick follow-up question. Scott, did you email me your slides yet? Thank you. So we'll rock Scott's slides back into the deck. Where can I find the deck, Daza? Legalhackathon.org, embedded handsomely right at the top, near the top of the page. Moving on up, we've got Vibe Chain. So Vibe Chain team, come on up. Time to present.
So what we had to do was do search for our chain. So for our song, sorry. So there's the catalog of songs on our song. We want to be able to make a query from a mobile device and get the return assets from our song. So that's basically what we did. The basic idea, again, you do a post to our API, at least from a mobile device, that goes to our song, which returns an array of songs that we can then display and let the user select and play the music. We tried to get now, we've got the first, I guess, layer done by, you can put in one query item and it will return one song. So that's kind of the, as far as we got. Kevon's going to show you the demo.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, I'll go next step after.
Can I switch the laptops? Very good. Thank you. I'm a geek, so everything is going to be pretty geeky, all black and white, and payloads. We just haven't had time to develop the UI behind this. But basically, today, you could go, whether you're on Android or iOS, go to App Store and download our song for your device. And we're one of the first companies that's actually storing the musical assets on chain. Once you download the app, then you could start playing with our catalog. Currently, we only have 4 items there. We're in pre-beta release, so there isn't a lot of inventory there. But there are musical assets that are coming on board. So this project is about being able to search the catalog, and again, the catalog is on-chain. It's an R version of blockchain, which in our case, the implementation is R now. So why don't I start by showing you what the search criteria looks like. Since I didn't want to do a lot of typing, I just put everything in a curl script. There we go. One second, please. And all of this, by the way, is in GitHub. So if you could see this, we're basically doing a post, and in this case, we're going for an album with the name Tiny Human and the song title Tiny Human, and we expect the metadata that's associated with that to come back. So all I'm doing here is basically executing that curl command and passing it through JQ to get a nice JSON representation. So that's a payload that will be coming in. For the purpose of this exercise, we got a song back. The ID is Tiny Human. That's what we were after. It has the song has two different. It comes with 2 different effects. There is the stereo version, which is a typical presentation of music that you use with your applications. And then we also have the 3D effect, and it's one of those things that you actually have to listen to yourself. It requires hard headphones that are actually wired in. It doesn't work with wireless, or it doesn't work well with the wireless, I should say. And with the 3D effect, you could actually feel the music traveling from one ear through your head to the other side. It gives that effect, which is really cool once you start listening to it. In any event, going back to this, so this is all the metadata is associated with that, and you also see the URI for different assets that are part of this music product. In this case, there is the immersive version, which is the 3D version. There is the stereo version, and finally the JPEG version. We decided to do the metadata in this way because that would allow the mobile app to make concurrent calls and try to satisfy retrieval of all these assets in a parallel way. that will be my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Cool.
Okay. So this is, thank you. So what I think would make sense to do is, now that you've presented, let's kind of hit and move and go to the other two presentations. Hear from George, and then let's get some feedback on your presentation. But the little bit of feedback that's appropriate now is put your hands together for that, because that was all done on the fly. Pretty good. So an implementation of our song, the Erlang and the R-Chain infrastructure to this very interesting use case for Vibe Chain. Okay, so let's see who is next. That was good. Thanks for putting that in there. So next we've got Ago. Okay, so Kevin Sandoval is going to join us. James Gillis, who's the computer science grad student at MIT that worked with Kevin, had to run. So he's here in spirit. Thank you, James, for coming and hacking with us. Okay, let's hear about Ago and the Ago project. Yeah, just go for it.
To the mic, yeah. So I came here mainly because I was really interested about being able to sample anything and not get sued for it. So James really helped me just think about how to build it, but essentially just from a very unsophisticated, quick take. This is kind of like the mock-up that we did of what it would look like in a very non-friendly way. But it's kind of like you search up a song, Miles Davis, So What, very popular jazz song. You play it or stream, you buy it, but more importantly, what I'm more interested in is like sampling license, and you would click on that, and then it would give you the options. You can, number one, remixing and sampling, which is where I'm mainly concerned about, but also, the commercial aspect of for TV shows, movies, advertisements, and then other, or whatever else you want, and then the licensing fee, which would be, X amount, free, $5, $1,000 if you're Kanye West, and believe it's worth that much. And you can be done through fiat, credit, or crypto, and then you have the option to download it right then and there, or send the file to your Gmail, your Drive, whatever it may be, and then you would just pretty much, kind of like a smart contract, I guess, have the licensing agreement of, Miles agrees to license song to producer Jay Dilla for X amount, and X amount of revenue generated by the new song, how the revenue splits, and then that I pretty much I agree to pay that amount and to share the proceeds with this, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. No, yeah, it was like half an hour that I had, so I couldn't really do that much, but it would kind of look, this is like the very unattractive, not aesthetically pleasing version of what it would look like, but any questions, comments about it, like that's kind of what we came up with.
Perfect. And so, we're going to get into deeper feedback, and this touches on a lot of things that I know George is going to raise. But I'd say the first and foremost is, I think, round of applause for bringing this from thought today to something that is what we would call it at MIT, that's engineerable.
Yeah.
So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So now the next, that's pronounced Ago. This is when we pray on Sunday that the screen will work. Please work. Please work. Pray harder. Okay. Thank you for your prayers. So now we have, what is this one? Which one is this? Did I skip one? Here's you have the Ender and stuff. Show me, do you know where that one is? This one. So I think they. Yeah, okay, perfect. Is this the first one? Oh, there we go, right there. So here's another team up with Endor and Berklee College of Music in a library context. So you introduce yourself and run us through the idea?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emil. I work at the Berkeley Library, and I just was exploring how I can use library usage data with a technology such as Endor. And the first few steps was me running with my generic needs as a manager at a library and learning what are some limitations of things that I'd like to figure out, but if I don't have actual behavior data, I cannot predict the future in that case. But Daniel walked me through situations where I do have transactional data that could lead me to make the decisions I want to make, like what books to buy when the space I have available in my library is decreasing and decreasing every year. But I did not get clearance before I came here to bring my own library data with student data. So we used data from Last.fm that they had shared with the world to try to guesstimate how the process would be to compare song playback data with pretending that is album checkout data from my library system. And the use case in bold, the last one, was the one that Daniel actually fleshed out by grabbing the data from Last.fm, which is given a set of engaged users, find more potential engaged users. Because, for example, at Berkeley, we feel that the music therapy students are heavy users. We want to find other untapped students from a particular major that we want to promote more of our services. So there's information on how to access this Last.fm data. The whole data set is 20 gigabytes. And the second link is an analysis of the quality of the data and the patterns within it. So like I said earlier, I mostly focus on album data, but then we use individual track playback to imitate that. Now, Daniel, would you like to say something about the process or a little bit about these screenshots?
It's getting technical up in there.
So to take you a bit through the process we went, at first we kind of dug into the data itself, we played around, we found some trends just by looking at the raw data. Then we took all the users, all the most engaged users from the platforms and from the transactional data there. From there we ran our engine in black here, in black and green, and we found more potential users who are going to be as heavy or similar to the heavy users we've queried before that. And at the end, at the right side, you can see the sorted list of user IDs of people who are going to be very heavy, just like the ones we are queried for. Now, the exciting part about this was that it was very easy, and we ran on partially encrypted data. In fact, it was so encrypted that we couldn't actually get the actual user data. At the end, only the IDs. But in a real-world scenario, me as an operator, I would reach out to these people and ask them for to be a bit more engaged, or even reward them with a coupon or a specific campaign.
So I started my discussion with Daniel about physical media like books and scores, but I would like to expand that to analyzing electronic data or online-based data like ebooks or streaming audio. But sadly, I need a lot more data from the actual vendors and some of my own subsystems. That's something else I want to explore.
Getting hits.
And I like to type into Berkeley's own student registration system so I can track down information like instruments that students play and majors. And another key next step would be to get clearance to share sample data from Berkeley with companies like Endor. And I'd specifically like to follow up with working with Endor some more. Besides sharing data, there's also everyone can benefit from sharing my use cases, just to give a different perspective. So thank you.
I'm clean here.
Perfect.
Good.
And so next is, I'm just going to go right to the site for this. You're probably wondering, how do I get to know what everybody seems to know at this hackathon? Go to legalhackathon.org, and here's a little pro tip. If you click on View Me on GitHub, you can unveil the underlying reality of the data. One of the things we have here is a cool little wiki. If you click on the wiki, you can see more documentation, all of the tools. And one of the things we have is, should have learning session. Open Music Initiative. So if you go to Open Music Initiative, you can get sort of the essence of George's remarks. Here's a little bit of background, George, and a sort of preliminary video that we did setting up the day. Is this the article, George, that you want in the background when you're speaking?
That's my hope. That's all. If you go there,
Oops, sorry. Oh, it is there. Okay. So this one? Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to go from those report outs to fill out a little more context with this article is sort of a primer on 2 rules for success for blockchain music entrepreneurs, and the remarks today are kind of a preview of the part 2 of this article, but all told it's going to be 4 points of failure, blockchain points of failure in the context of the music industry. So with that, and George, just like all of us here, you're hacking to the last second, which I love and admire, but it is time.
all right.
Thanks, George.
All right. First off, thank you all for. We don't need to look at Dolly Parton. Yeah, thanks for doing this, right? I mean, it's not like there are other things to do on a Sunday, but this is important. I think the timing is really crucial, more crucial than people would have you believe about the music industry. As I said earlier, it's not a great time. But one of the things that's been driving me of late is I'm obviously a true believer in the blockchain space. I mean, I saw Imogen up there in the Tiny Human thing, and if you go back on my articles back, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, it seems crazy. The very first ones, the Genesis block, was Imogen and I sort of writing out the spec in public for mycelia. So she's a true believer, we're all true believers. In that time, I think that it's pretty hard to dispute that blockchain as a tech has become what Nassim Taleb would describe as anti-fragile. So even as Ethereum might get dinged and hit and hurt and everything else, I think we can plausibly say that blockchain as a tech isn't going anywhere. In point of fact, blockchain as a tech has been around a lot longer than people would care to talk about. So I'm not concerned, nor do I really care about blockchain as an underlying technology. I do deeply care about music and art, and I am driven by this idea that this technology actually might allow for some of these very interesting ideas to perpetuate. But at the same time that blockchain as a technology is getting stronger and more in use, blockchain as an answer or a way for music entrepreneurs or the music business or whatever to evolve, I would say, is at a deeply fragile state. I say this for a couple of reasons. One, that the startups, and I won't mention any names, so to speak, that have kind of been kicking around for a while, have little to nothing to show for it. And if anybody wants to dispute that with me, I'm all ears. I'm one, barely functional human being, so I'm likely missing things, but I can't find any examples. The second thing, is this mine? And then what happens with that then is it sends what's known as a chilling effect. I mean, we're all lawyers, right? A chilling effect to the investment community. They say, well, look, we've dumped money into this. It's not working. We'll turn our money elsewhere, right? And that's quite honestly a tactic that the historic music industry has used forever, right? They've used forever barriers and moats an obfuscation to keep status quo, and legal threats and everything else, so that any entrepreneurial spirit that would in any way potentially disrupt the incumbents were very, very quickly shut down. So why? What is going on? What are the points that need to be addressed? And I was looking at the what do you call it, the hacks, the projects, whatever, and they all are within these 4 points. And so this is all said with love and with, again, take it as you will, but I keep seeing the same repeated problems. The very first one is the problem lies around the content itself. So I love what's the name of your company? What is it? With an H though, right? What does it mean? Oh, I love that. Can you get that URL, or do you have the URL for that? Okay. So, so like with yours, samples is a big bugaboo in the music business, right? And I get completely, or I think I get as much as one can from an 8-second pitch, your gesture of, hey, let's open this up. And you bring up one of my favorite songs of all time, right? Miles Davis, and So What? That's a composition he actually did write. Many of his compositions that are famous, he did not, right? Exactly. And so he wrote So What? And he and his publishing company maybe own that underlying right, which is known in the music business, and if I'm telling you stuff you already know, I apologize, but I bet everybody doesn't, right? So that underlying right, that underlying copyright is known as the composition. So he, Miles Davis, and maybe his publishing company own that. On the other side, Columbia Records put the record out that released that, right? And so Columbia Records owns the other copyright, which is the sound recording for That's on Kind of Blue, right? So they own and it's one of their most protected copyrights, right? They will sue the bejesus out of anybody that wants to do anything with it. So I would love to take 30 seconds of So What, right? And put it into some work of mine. In order for me to legally do that, or to do that without prima facie infringement, I would need to get approval from Miles Davis's estate. Well, no. Miles Davis's estate and or the publisher, right? And then I'd also have to go to Columbia Records and get approval from them. Neither of whom have any compulsory reason to do so. In other words, if I wanted to do a cover version of So What, which would be a terrible motherfucking idea, right? But not without plausibility in my life, right? I could sit down with my guitar and say I want to cover So What in some drunken state. And legally, they can't stop me. No, but hang with me. They cannot stop me from doing a shitty cover of So What. Neither the publisher nor the label, because the label doesn't have anything to do with it. And the publisher can't stop me. It's what's known as a compulsory license, and I can pay the ridiculous fee, right? The fee set by, who sets it? Huh? Yeah, Congress, right? Your United States representatives, right? Our bicameral system are setting the maximum dollar amount that that Miles Davis can pay for So What. If you can wrap your head around that and explain that to me, I'd love you for it. I cannot think of any other industry in the world except for, I was giving this example, maybe the Dawes, and Dawes was like, oh yeah, well in Soviet Russia they do that. I was like, yeah, exactly, right? So I can't think of any other, but so you get what I'm saying. I know, but so why are you trying to build a business around that? Because you're not going to get, like that's, so problem number one, point of failure number one with blockchain-based startups, you understand this, but many do not. They don't understand the complexities around copyright law. I'm begging people who are trying to do startups in the music industry, a la this one, to work with what's known as controlled compositions. By that I mean works that are owned or controlled by the person who writes the song and performs the song, because therefore they can license it. They can say, sure, and I'll set a price. For you to build that process where I'm going to license a snippet of So What, you have at minimum, and I bet it's more than this, at minimum 2 parties that would have to be coordinated. So you've got an order of magnitude more complexities at inception. It's not going to work, right? You could use an Excel motherfucking program. It won't matter. Your issue is not the technology. Your issue are the rights problems. Yeah. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, point of failure, relates to the state of the art with respect to smart contract technologies. And so,
George said motherfucking.
and likely I will again. Am I not allowed to do that?
No, you aren't. The point is, this is important. So if you're wondering about why we're doing this today, I want to emphasize one thing. The technology is, in a sense, not the barrier here.
No.
You could do this in a motherfucking spreadsheet. So let's look at the actual barrier.
Yes, that's right. The actual barrier is the failure to understand that music copyright law is really, really hard and complex, and has been statutorily designed to make it almost impossible for startups to access it. That's the point of failure, right? I mean, what's it, Clark's whatever law, sufficient technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? We'll know blockchain has adopted when people stop saying the word blockchain. Nobody says TCP/IP. I don't care what technology means. I genuinely am different to that, right? So, but speaking of the technology, the second point of failure relates to the current state of the art with smart contracts, right? Smart contracts work exceedingly well for things like supply chain management, and that's why people are using them for that, because it's a simple if this, then that routine, right? It's simply, okay, if this rule is satisfying, another one will self-execute. Going back to point one, with music typically having a number of coordinatable or needing coordination rights holders, it's one thing if there's a controlled composition that says, if somebody wants to license this work at this price and it is met, blockchain's all day long. If on the other hand, it's, well, you can license this work, but there has to be approval from this party, who also has to get approval from this party, and then this party, and if they say no, then this, and it goes, right? Smart contracts are very binary in nature. They don't do nuance well, and we're asking too much of them. So we're asking too much of the technology, and I know the art-chain technology maybe better than I should, and I think it's phenomenal, and maybe this is the thing that will allow us to accelerate it, but we all know in this room that the cost and the time to scale transactions on a blockchain right now ain't great. And then trying to ask smart contracts to do something they just can't do will, again, cause things to break really, really fast. The third one, and this worries me about Elon's company, and I talked to him about this earlier, and that is network effect. There's been too much hype around just the general idea of blockchain, and that if you do some sort of music startup that happens to be on a blockchain and you say the word blockchain, people will give a shit. They do not, right? Customers do not care. Customers desperately need some sort of value proposition that improves their lives without forcing them to learn new skills. Period, full stop. And unless and until we can do that, there will not be adoption, and we will not have two-sided markets. So we'll have a bunch of crap on a blockchain that maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, it doesn't matter, people won't buy it. The investment community will go, oh, well, blockchain was the problem. Nope, you're a bad marketer. You don't understand net promoter score. You don't understand all the things that needs to happen to shift the burden of marketing from yourself or your company to the users because you don't have a USP. And all of those things have nothing to do with the technology, but you can't simply rely on the technology to be your marketing tool. Number 4, this is controversial. This is George speaking for George and not George speaking for Open Music Initiative. It's a wonder they let me out of the house. Point number 4, you must assume evil with respect to the major labels and publishers. Maybe they will be nice and good. In 30 years in the music industry, I have never seen that happen. They do not cut off the branch of the tree upon which they sit. However, they are not dumb. They like their systems the way it is, but they also get upward pressure from technology, etc. Too often, they will do things that's known in the business world as sandbagging, which means they'll say, sure, company X, Y, or Z, we'd love to do a blockchain technology project with you. Company X, Y, or Z goes, oh, this is great. And they release press releases and all this and that and the other thing. Company X blockchain partners with Company Y incumbent. Company Y incumbent sets it up for failure. Company Y incumbent gets to then in good faith or in good perception of faith say, we tried, it didn't work. Think about it. Over and over and over again. So, these are my little cautionary tales. Obviously, they're not universal. Obviously, there are elements in each one of them that can be massaged and maybe work to your benefit, but in looking at these things, and I've done more of these things than I care to know, I see in each of them these same kind of potential points of failure. Not understanding the fundamental elements of copyright, relying too much on unlicensable work so you can't get a data set, over expectation of the technology generally, smart contracts specifically, this will change. Thinking that you can somehow magically create a market just because you're using the word network, blockchain, in other words, forgetting network effect. And number 4, assuming anything other than evil with strategic partnerships at the incumbent level. Make of it what you want.
Super fantastic. So that I'm very, very glad that we got that kind of on recorded so that we can go back and actually really think about this and make this part of our portfolio, part of our agenda. But first things first, let's now have I want to get kind of a better background screen going here. Who can figure out my password from what I just did? Some human factor. Someone's like looking at like the slight glare behind me, and that's the good hack.
As written by Donald or performed by Whitney, both of them.